same ritual, of, gathering figures from different departments, ministries, and agencies and putting them together, adding a few percentages, subtracting a few percentages here and there, and coming up with a new figure, for the budget in the succeeding year. I've not seen anything, drastically different from the budget of 2017, 2016, and all the other subsequent budgets we have always passed. If you remember that, last year's budget, mundane as it was, in my view, took 6 months to debate and pass. Eventually, the budget was passed and signed into law in June, for something that was supposed to have taken off in January. It was actually, rather disappointing. But we keep doing this all over again, without introducing innovation into the budgeting process. I think that we need to change the parameters of our budgeting to enable the country earn a lot more resources. Because if you look at this year's budget in real currency terms, we haven't really made any significant, progress. The total size of the budget is still in the region of $24 billion if you convert, the current year's budget, to dollars at the prevailing exchange rate. And if you then compare it, with the budgets for prior years when, the exchange rate was a lot less, maybe in the region of about 150, 160, you will discover that we actually are, we're earning and spending much less now, than we were, some years ago. So even though the number of trillions have gone up, in real purchasing terms, you discover that what we are spending as a country right now is a lot less than it could have been. And I think that it's because of the attitude towards, the revenue profile of the country. I still can't understand why we are budgeting based on the sale of crude oil. We've done this since independence. And I do not know why in the 21st century, in 2018, government still plans to make money from the sale of crude oil, when we can earn several times more if we were to project our budget on the basis of selling refined products. Because, just like I was saying, our total budget size is $24 billion. In 2018, the same 2018, we could have projected a budget of close to $100 billion if we just, using the same parameters of production, 2.3 million barrels, but changing the income expectation from a $45 per barrel threshold to several multiples more if we were refining the same quantity of production that's our own equity crude, which is about 60% of total production. If we were to refine all of that production and then put the same on the market, both locally and internationally, we'll earn definitely close to 10 times more. So why are we shortchanging ourselves on a year-by-year basis and doing exactly the same thing that we did in the prior years without any form of innovation?
I like that question.
That's the plank of of my grouse, with the current situation.
I like question.
Exactly the same thing that I.
Mr. Ame, two things you've spoken about: innovation and why do we keep rolling over like a rolling stone. So let's bring this to the panel here in Lagos. And Wale, let's start with you in terms of Mr. Ame there was talking about bringing innovation into budgeting process, which is basically the job of the executive. Do you agree that we need some innovation in our budgeting process?
Okay. If you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it actually requires all the MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies to submit their input by August. Now, between August and, say, about October, the executive should get the budget ready. This year, for instance, the budget was read by the president on the 7th of November. It's an improvement on what happened in 2016, where the 2017 budget was read on the 11th of December or thereabout. However, I think we need to put some discipline around the timing at which the budget is read by the executive and the time at which it is passed by the National Assembly. Now, 2017 budget was approved on the 12th of June 2017. That was already 7 months after the budget was read at the National Assembly. So between the National Assembly and the executive, there needs to be some handshake. There needs to be some common grounds as to how we move this country forward. I mean, if you look back, for example, during the period of recession, there didn't seem to be some kind of urgency on the part of the legislature, for example, to introduce new laws that will actually stimulate activities within the economy. So we need to stop this controversy and infighting in government, concerning the budgeting process. So we all need to be on board to say this thing is very urgent. And I like to look forward to the time when actually by the 1st of January every year, the budget is ready for full implementation.
I appreciate that. But Justin, is it about, yes, we need to get the timelines right, I need to be good, but in terms of what goes into that document, in terms of whether we need to change the parameters, Mr. Ami there was talking about whether we need to, we say we're going to do $100 billion kind of a budget, and we change the price of oil, for example, and perhaps be more creative. In terms of the content itself, what do you think? Do you think we need to do more on that?
Well, the way I would look at it is that we need to, the government had actually said it was changing the budgeting system. And the government said it was moving away from incremental budgeting system to zero-based budgeting system. And the zero-based budgeting system would allow MDAs to justify every expense as if it's absolutely new.
So I'm going to break in there. Do we have that now or we don't?
No, we don't seem to have it, because the government has said, the government told us earlier that 2017 budget was based on zero-based budgeting. But when it was subject to some analysis, it turned out to be an incremental budget. I also believe that the 2018
budget... So the administration has not kept faith with that promise?
I do not even think the administration has the capacity in terms of human capital to do a zero-based budgeting system. There has to be a lot of training at the MDA level, so that they understand that for every item you bring to the budget, you need to justify it. You need to justify every kobo that you are budgeting for. It's not just to say, look, I incurred a rent of 2 million naira, I have to incur, the rent will increase to 2.5 million naira. You have to justify whether it's actually worth staying in that particular complex or that office complex to announce it and say, look, do you really have the head count to be in that space that you need to pay 2 million? Or can you go to a smaller office so you can pay 1 million? So that's the concept of zero budget. You need to justify every expenditure as if it is to be incurred at first. And we not develop that competence.
I know you do. I know you do budgeting for career asset management, so you understand whether if you have 2 air conditions in a particular manager's office, whether the office is small and it needs to have just 1 air condition instead of 3.
Exactly.
Perhaps a refrigerator, the size of this, the height of the camera, or it is just a bedside one to manage it. So if you say, well, let's just buy refrigerators because every government official needs a refrigerator, and we just import a refrigerator that costs XY instead of perhaps a little bit less. Let's bring it to my good friend from Deloitte. Kunle, where do you want us to, what do you think we should do first with the process? And we'll talk a little bit about the executive. But again, we need to talk about the legislature. Do you think we have the right mindset? And Wale was talking about that a little bit earlier, alluding to that. The urgency that the National Assembly, the executive, the legislature on both sides, both the upper and lower houses, need to have to drive the budgetary process. Because as soon as the executive delivers, even before the executive delivers, do we have the right conversation on the street already at the legislature to prepare them for what is coming?
Well, I wouldn't think the legislature feels the sense of urgency that the budget requires, because if they feel that sense of urgency, I do not see a reason why a budget, a 2017 budget, for instance, that was presented to the legislature by the president on 11th of December 2016 should take 6 months for the legislature to pass. And if you look at the details of the budgets, the president presented the budget about 7.298 trillion to the National Assembly. What they passed was the budget about 7.44 trillion. Asking myself, looking at the budget on the earlier on the total basis, what change really has gone to that budget that will necessitate our legislature waiting for 6 months to pass that budget? I don't think that is there right now.
But can we really blame the National Assembly if what the executive sent to them was not really tidied up figure?
Right, so I agree with you that there needs to be a lot more handshake between the two arms of government. I mean, the legislative and the executive. They need to interact a lot more, and I think this can be achieved. Because a lot of multinationals, a lot of organizations do budgeting, and